Pharisee Heresy, Heresy Pharisee. Jesus was a Pharisee, and that is no heresy. Jesus was an Hillel Pharisee. Yeah! Woo! Welcome back to the Pharisee Heresy with Dr. Daniel, coming back to tell us some more about historicism.
Thanks, Dr. Klein.
Not hysterism or hysterectomy.
Yes, not hysterectomy. Or
you might feel like you need to get one after this conversation. It's possible.
Yeah, so, I mean, historicism, typically, last time we talked about preterism and futurism. So you have people that are kind of saying that basically most of prophecy was fulfilled by 70 CE or AD when the temple was destroyed by the Romans. And then you have the futurists that say that, basically all of the Matthew 24, all of that discourse applies to future events. So you kind of have to ignore the fact that it all fits 70 CE, like the preterists say. But then you have things that don't seem to fit the preterist narrative either. And then within preterism, you've got several different forms of it. But there's a third classification of Bible prophecy interpretation known as historicism. And historicism basically looks at history and tries to fit the words of the Bible and prophecy into actual historical events. So you could say that interpreting, the Olivet Discourse into 70 CE with the destruction of the temple is historicism to a degree, but then what you'd have to do is you'd have to say that like pretty much all of Revelation shouldn't be interpreted from a historicist viewpoint. So it doesn't really fit all the way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think all of us who've kind of read the Bible, we've kind of just turned a blind eye to this. We're like, yeah, that fits, but it can't really fit because we read Left Behind and we know that it all happens later. So it's just I think I put it in like a box of like and to be fair, like I haven't dug deep into this at all. Very new to this. I know you're new to it, but I'm like a baby new to it. I've just watched some YouTube videos just so I'm not completely in the dark here. So I will play devil's advocate and challenge you on this. It's not like that we're completely in agreement here. I'm probably still in the futurist camp. But yeah, there's these things, and it's like, well, yeah, that was kind of fulfilled in 70 AD, or even like with Antiochus Epiphanes and that abomination of the destination. We kind of see like, well, is that fulfillment, or is that later? And then we just have this idea of, that's partial fulfillment, or it's cyclical, and it's like a picture of later fulfillment, and that's how I got to sleep at night, I guess.
Yeah, and me too. And like you said, I'm fairly new to historicism as well, and it was really these hard questions that were proposed to me that made me want to dive into it deeper and really figure out where I stood on the position. So I'll give you a quick snippet of some things that I wrote down to kind of define historicism. Basically, historicism sees the book of Revelation as predictive of actual historical events to occur throughout the history of Christianity from the time of John, the Revelator, not the Baptist, to what's known as the second coming of Messiah. I actually refer to that as the Greater Apocalypse, coined that term as well. So I found the historicist school of interpretation to be the most convincing and compelling so far for me out of all the things that I'm weighing in the balance here. So, for example, if we look at the four beasts of Daniel, they're pretty much unanimously interpreted with a historicist method. Right? Everyone looks at these four beasts of Daniel and realizes, oh yeah, that's clearly referring to the Babylonians, the Medes and Persians, the Greeks, and then you've got the Romans coming up with this last ginormous beast with iron teeth that tramples everything in its way. Right? So nobody has a problem interpreting.
It's a literal beast, man.
Yeah, it's a literal beast. Yeah, but the point is, like, nobody has a problem interpreting Daniel's stuff through a historicist lens because history shows that that's clearly how it played out. Yet when we get to Revelation, all of a sudden it's almost like we throw all that language and all those themes out the window and try to interpret it from a completely different methodology. So if I'm wanting to be consistent in interpretation, then I should at least attempt to interpret it with a historicist model and see if it fits the last 2,000 years of history. Right? Did John's revelation in approximately 96 CE, start taking place almost immediately and play out through history, or is there approximate 2,000 year gap where nothing prophetic happened, and now we should expect all of a sudden to see all these things take place in a very short period of time?
I think I've even had some exposure to this, like before we even talked about this, because I've been reading this NRSV Cultural Context Bible, and when you get to Revelation, it's all about like, the Romans and the scorpion tail. It's actually talking about the Parthians, how they would be able to shoot an arrow behind them. I'm like, no, man, it's helicopters, right? It's like all this stuff, like eschatology you're trying to come up with. It's really this, or calling fire down from heaven. It's really about, nuclear warfare. And it's like they all try to fit it into this box, and no one really even pauses to think about it. Maybe it was historical, maybe it's already happened. And then they struggle with that. I struggle with that. So help us not struggle with that, Daniel. Help us.
Yeah.
Because I fought it at the time when I was reading it before we had these conversations. Like, no, they're wrong, stupid scholars.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much I can help with. I can try. But, I guess I can touch on it briefly here and try to give at least a taste of what this historicist lens looked like in Revelation. And so let me just pop open this document really quick to refer to.
Gonna put in your
one thing context, yeah. Revelation 1:10 says, "Therefore write down the things you have seen, and the things that are, and the things that will happen after this." So past, present, and future. So what's revealed to John is a recap of things that have happened, things that are happening currently, and things that will happen. So we should be able to identify all three of those things to some degree. I'd argue that the majority of things refer to things that would happen, after this. But we can look at, let's go to the first seal. So within Revelation, you've got the seals, the bowls, or sometimes called vials, and the trumpets. And so most people see the 7 seals as like a start to finish scroll. You open one seal, open the next seal. By the time you get to the final seal, seal number 7, that's the last one. That's when Messiah returns, what I call the greater apocalypse, and it's all done. And so what happens is the bowls and the trumpets take place within the seals. So by the time, it's not like you could do all 7 seals and then you start the bowls, then you start the trumpets. They're built into the system. So we can just go through all the seals and kind of get a start to finish look at things. But if you look at just the first seal, that's found in Revelation 6, verse 1 and 2. So I'm going to pull that up so I can read it. And it says, I'm reading from the BSB, which is the Berean Standard Bible. So he says, "Then I watched as the Lamb opened one of the 7 seals. And I heard one of the 4 living creatures say in a thunderous voice, 'Come.' So I looked and saw a white horse, and its rider held a bow, and he was given a crown, and he rode out to overcome and conquer." Okay, so we're given very limited information about this seal, but I would argue that it should be somewhat relevant or understandable to John that, hey, he's going to see this image and have an idea of what this may mean. Okay, so two themes that you see all throughout Revelation. Number one, you see wartime themes. You see battles in heaven. You see kings taking their thrones, kings being dethroned. You see conquering horses, death, destruction, fire, plagues, all these things, famines. So that's one theme, is like this wartime theme or language. The other thing is you see a lot of astrological themes. So, in astronomy, you study the motion and position of the stars and planets and all those things. In astrology, you try to get understanding or interpretation of what that might mean. So astrology, most people think of like pagan, occult astrology as soon as you say that word. But what you'll find is if you look through the scriptures, heresy, and if you look through the scriptures, you'll see that God talks about astrology. The problem is it's been perverted. So you'll actually see that in Revelation. You'll see it in Revelation 12. You'll see it, I think, in Revelation 4 or 5. And you'll see these images like, the sun, moon, and stars were darkened or fell from the sky and all these sort of things. And so we have to understand, like, there's a language that's being used there. So if we can understand the language, we might understand what God's trying to say. So going back, any questions on that before
I was just going to throw in the whole, I remember reading Wars of the Jews by Josephus, and he talks about one of the astrological signs that I think even Revelation talks about, the dragon and I can't remember exactly, but remember the woman and the womb. I don't know if you've looked into that. I remember
that's Revelation 12.
Yeah, your buddy Shane Nelson about that.
So why don't we, if you want, we go to Revelation 12 right after we...
We don't have to. Just example.
Oh, it's kind of cool, but yeah, we'll touch on that for a second. But yeah, so here's the seal, the first seal, and it's described as he saw a white horse, and its rider held a bow, and he was given a crown, and rode out to overcome and conquer. So, what we have to understand is that from the time that this was given in 96, you have in Rome at that point now a succession of 5 emperors. That's 5. 5 emperors that are all Cretans. Yeah. So these are the 5 Cretan emperors of Rome that took the throne from this time forward, from 96 CE to 180 CE. Okay? So these were Nerva, Trajan, Hadrian, Antonius Pius, and Marcus Aurelius. So these emperors all were Cretans. Now, Cretans, what were they known for? They're infamous bowmen. Okay, so Cretans were known as having these famed bowmen. And the other thing that you should know is that in a Roman triumph, the emperor or the conqueror would ride in on a white horse to signify that he had just conquered a nation, and they would have a triumph, and there would be a great procession, and everyone would be gathered in town to celebrate. And if a city didn't do it right, then they would be punished. Okay, so this was this huge deal. Even Yeshua had his own triumph, or what we call the triumphal entry, except he rode in on a donkey, signifying he was coming in peace, right? So now we have this imagery of a Roman emperor riding in on a white horse and crown. Now,
you're saying it wasn't a battle donkey?
It might have been. I wouldn't know what one of those looks like. But...
No, this is a joke, sorry.
Yeah.
Kicking some dust at Kingdom in Context there.
I was going to make a joke, but it's probably inappropriate for some audiences. So
lack of context.
So
you missed my contacts joke before earlier. I was upset.
Nice.
Thought long and hard about that.
A laurel wreath that you would wear. You ever seen the pictures of Romans with their laurel wreath? Indicates or symbolized victory. So I want to show you if I can. Let me see if I can share this. Okay. Let me show my desktop. can you see
Okay.
this
Yeah.
coin?
Mm-hmm.
Is it small, or do I need to make it bigger?
It's small, but coins are generally small. There we go.
Okay.
It's bigger.
So here you have a coin of Emperor Hadrian. Okay. And
All I know about him is he built a wall.
okay, he was very not a good guy, but what you can see is he's on a horse. Let me bring this a little bit. There we go.
He's got a great
Raising
beard.
his right hand. Yeah, he's wearing a laurel wreath. Okay, symbolizing victory. So this is not something that like I just dreamed up, or somebody that came up with this. I didn't come up with this. You know, I read books about it. We didn't just dream it up. This was known imagery of the time, right? So you come in on a white horse, and you're raising your hand in victory. You got your laurel wreath, okay? And so it simply symbolizes this victory. So now you have these 5 Cretan emperors of Rome. And we can go through, and I've got a few notes here on all the seals.
I gotta ask, and I feel like naive for not knowing, but like when we call somebody a Cretan today, is that at all related to this, or it's just?
If you call somebody a Cretan today,
Yeah, like you're a Cretan.
Dirty Cretans, always liars, right?
I don't know.
That's what the Bible says.
Uh-uh.
So, yeah, so it shouldn't be sharing anymore, right?
No, it's not.
Okay.
Just
my
ugly face.
Nice. Yeah, so there's your first seal. Now, you go into the second seal, and you're going to see another horse went forth. It was bright red, and its rider was granted permission to take away peace from the earth and to make men slay one another, and he was given a great sword. Okay, so immediately after this period, from 180 to 192, you have Emperor Commodus. So this is, after these 5 Cretan emperors, and this is a period of immense civil war within the Roman Empire. Okay, so it apparently lasted about 92 years, from 193 to 284.
It's a heck of a civil war.
And during that time, there were 32 emperors and 27 pretenders to the empire. So it was constant upheaval. It was like people are fighting for control and power, and they constantly were like hurling each other from the throne by incessant civil warfare. So basically, yeah, you have huge civil war and civil unrest. The third seal is the black horse, and so in this place it says it's a black horse with scales, and the quote is, "Hurt not the oil and the wine." So it's basically saying don't overcharge for food. So at this time, Rome was taxing really heavily to fund their wars. They were not stable, and so they
need to
began
get in
taxing
on the Gladiator too.
Yeah.
Because I think
Cool.
Marcus Aurelius is the emperor in the first one, so it's probably going to take place in that civil unrest period you're talking about. So they need to.
If only I was a true historian.
They need to pick your ear. Let's see if
Yeah, make it about the Bible. That'd be awesome. So, I mean, I'm not going to go through all the seals and stuff, but I just want to give you an idea. If it was one seal, it would be like, oh, okay, that's a coincidence. I could just discharge that idea. But if you follow through all the seals, you'll find it follows the history of the Roman Empire. So they were heavily taxing on farmland and food. So the farmers, and the farmers were being attacked by barbarians, and so they moved in towards the city, and this caused famine. So now there was a low supply of food and heavy taxation, and so now all of a sudden you're paying your taxes with oil and wine. And people are starting to overcharge for food, and it's just a bad time, which leads to the fourth seal of famine and pestilence. Okay, and so one thing that people ought to get caught up on is when Revelation talks about the earth, or the whole earth. But to them, the whole earth was the Near East. It was the Roman Empire and surrounding areas. They weren't discussing Australia and Antarctica and North America and South America, right? So the whole world referred to basically the Roman Empire at that time. So if these visions are talking about the world, it's talking about the world that John lived in, right? So when I saw that, I was like, okay, if this follows the actual history of Rome perfectly, I can't ignore that anymore. I've got to go through and I've got to read everything that way. And if it doesn't line up, it doesn't line up. But if it does, then this is probably a more accurate way to understand the scripture. We need to test everything like good Bereans. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I think I heard fireworks or something, and I thought something was in my house, but we're good. Continue. You saw me looking around. I'm like,
if you need to grab the gun and go take care of business and then hop back on, I'm good with that. But
I'm like, the 4th was over, 10 days ago. Get over it, people.
So Revelation 12 that you brought up, so there's your historic wartime type of language, and then Revelation 12 you get a taste of astrological language. Here it says it right in front of you. A great sign appeared in heaven. Okay, well there you have it. Signs in the heavens. What is that? Well, you're interpreting something in the heaven. By definition, that's astrology.
Paganism.
Now the problem is, if you're not careful with the material, you can go online, you can start reading stuff about horoscopes and interpreting someone's future and all this sort of nonsense, and get caught up in pagan astrology, which is a perversion of the story that God wrote in the heavens, the God's master timepiece that he placed there.
Yeah.
And Paul talks about people can look up in the heavens and see that gods exist. In Acts 17, he proclaimed to them the unknown God, and they were worshiping Mars and Apollo, but he said, look, you've made idols out of these things. You've taken gold and silver and formed an image of something that isn't real. I'm proclaiming to you the Creator that actually made all these things, that you perverted into nonsense. So we get to Revelation 12, and here it is. A great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed in the sun, with the moon under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars on her head. And she was pregnant and crying out in the pain and agony of giving birth. So you have this picture of a woman clothed in the sun, the moon under her feet, and 12 stars on her head. And she's giving birth. Okay, then you have a description of a dragon that wanted to devour the child. The dragon wanted to kill the child, Yeshua. Herod wanted to kill Yeshua as soon as he was born. When he found out from the Magi, who, by the way, saw his star rising, he wanted to kill him. Now, what were the Magi looking for in order to ascertain the birth of the Jewish Messiah? Well, the Magi were descended from the ancient astronomers of Chaldea. And, who is the most famous astronomer of the Babylonians? Well, it was Daniel, who was put in charge of the entire kingdom after he bested every other astrologer in Nebuchadnezzar's court.
A little historical nugget, and you probably know it, but Babylon at this time, even like Hillel the Elder came from Babylon because it was controlled by Parthia, who was kind of like the spiritual successor to Persia, and they were very tolerant, and so the Jews kind of thrived in Babylon. So we think Babylon, that's bad, right? But actually, that at this time, it was pretty good. So a lot of Jewish scholars did come and studied in Babylon. Like Hillel eventually came to Jerusalem, but just something I learned recently.
Yeah. I mean, in fact, the Babylonian calendar was influenced
The Babylonian Talmud, that's where it comes from.
By the Jews, by Daniel. The way that they intercalated their years actually shifted shortly after that time, to where they would intercalate in either the first or the 6th month, and they stopped switching between the two. I believe they only intercalated in the 6th month after that. But anyways,
it's fireworks, man.
So they were influenced by the Jewish people. So a lot of people claim that like the Israelites were influenced by the Babylonians and took all the paganism with them, when the narrative of Scripture it gives us the opposite, that although the Israelites were taken into captivity, they influenced the Babylonians through Daniel.
I feel like this is a whole other episode, but I think it's a very important episode to talk about the calendar.
True.
Because you hear a lot
of it's calendar.
Hillel's calendar is evil, it's Babylonian.
When Cyrus defeated Babylon, he made okay, so it was Cyrus and Cyrus's father-in-law Darius. There we go. So Darius was Cyrus's father-in-law. They took Babylon together. So this was the Medo-Persians. Darius was king of the Medes, and Cyrus of the Persians.
Not to be confused with the other Darius.
Yes, yeah, that's a whole other issue that's very difficult. But so Darius, like Daniel, took him back to his capital city with him, and basically put him in charge of like hundreds of provinces, or maybe not hundreds, but like 100 provinces or something.
Where did you get that information, by the way? Just curious, because we don't
think that was from.
Don't really know what happens to Daniel, right? There's not.
I think that was from Josephus.
Okay.
So if I can find it, I will. But yeah. So long story short, that's what happened. Let's see if I can pop that up. It's going to be hard to find. Let's see.
I just remember one rabbi talking about him even being involved in the story of Esther, like being the guy that goes between Esther and Mordecai, kind of in between as an old man, and Mordecai or Haman actually ends up murdering Daniel, showing that he was even involved in the court even up to that time, making him quite an old dude. I think so. I don't know if that's from Josephus, but somewhere like 200 years old, like crazy, like that.
I think I remember a little bit of that. Yeah.
Possible. I know, like that Hillel was around 120 when he died.
Oh wow.
So.
Let's see. Yeah. So.
Which means he would have met Jesus.
Yeah. Right. When he was like 12, right?
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, Darius was king of the Medes. His nephew Cyrus II the Great was prince of Persians. They defeated Belshazzar and took Babylon when Darius was 62. Darius gave Cyrus his daughter's hand in marriage and the whole kingdom of Media as dowry. So that's where Cyrus basically took over Media and Persia and ruled the Medo-Persian Empire at that point. And then Darius died 2 years later in 536. So Cyrus assumed the full reign. I don't see the reference in this section to Daniel being taken with him.
We'll just hit
I'll
it
have
next
to find
time.
that for you later.
Yeah.
Yeah, next time. All right. So this Revelation 12 sign, verse 3, another sign appeared in heaven, a huge red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns, 7 royal crowns on his heads. His tail swept a third of the stars from the sky, tossing them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman who was about to give birth, ready to devour her child as soon as she gave birth. And she gave birth to a male child who will rule all the nations with an iron scepter. Okay, we all know who that's talking about, Yeshua. And her child was caught up to God in his throne. I believe that's the ascension. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where God prepared a place for her to be nourished 1,260 days. Now that's open to interpretation, but the historicist would make those days prophetically referring to years in which the church was persecuted by Romanism or the papacy. So we can see this sign in the heavens. Do you want me to pull it up?
No, that's fine. Keep going.
Okay. I mean, I mean, I don't really know where to go, but that's something. Yeah, that's something we can see in the heavens if we want to pull up that and show
Where
it.
does
But
that
I don't know how.
1200 years bring us? Because you said it was, persecution by the papacy. When
Right.
did that end, and what are we talking about there? When does it start?
Right. Okay, so that would be um, from about 538 CE to
538.
1798.
Wow.
Okay, so um,
So it's just
the popes of Rome.
shortly after the Revolutionary War. Related at all?
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, because that was a time of intense
Because when did the war end? We always say
religious.
1776, but that's when we decided to fight. But the war lasted,
Right.
what, 8 years?
I don't remember.
So
I don't
that'd be
remember, but yeah,
close.
it
Close
was.
to what you said. What'd you say?
Oh,
1780.
so well, 1798
Oh, okay. Wouldn't be
would
that.
be the end of that period. So it would start with when the popes were empowered by the Eastern Emperor Justinian in 538. So they were empowered militarily. They had military substance to them to trample the saints, to be able to actually go in and um, take control of empires. And it was at this time that the Pope defeated the three other Roman Empire divisions, the three other kingdoms within the Roman Empire that withstood him, that stood against him, that restrained him. And so and this is referring to those 10 horns of the beast, right? Of that fourth beast of Daniel with the 10 horns. And another little horn rose up and defeated three of the others. And so we see this happening with the papacy in 538. And through the empowerment of the emperor, he defeated the rebellious three kingdoms that didn't want the papacy to rule. And the papacy took the same title as the Roman emperors of old, which is Pontifex Maximus. And so you see that same title in use today with the popes, although militarily the popes have been stripped of power since 1798. So they don't have the military backing, but they still hold the office, a spiritual um, office, but they don't. But now what you have is the Protestant Reformation also pulled away, and then you have the American Revolution and the French Revolution that basically continue to strip power from them. And so we live in an era of post-papal domination, but we still live in an era where people bow down to the image of the Pope and worship. Okay, so
What is that image?
yeah, that's see what you're doing is you're asking all the questions that I'm still trying to work out. Uh,
Well, even that stuff you're talking about, I feel like an idiot. I'm like,
yeah,
I should know more about that, like the papacy. It's like, yeah, I understand the Revolutionary War, but like, yeah, getting back to like, why did the Protestant Reformation happen? Like, looking more at
right,
that, and it's very interesting how they controlled so much. Probably even the Crusades and everything, and their hand in that.
right. They certainly did. So I mean, you've got um, let's see, kind of leading up to this, you've got the first trumpet, which was the Goth invasion by Alaric. You've got the second trumpet. You have the Vandals attacking the Roman Empire. You have the third trumpet, which is Attila the
I was gonna
Hun.
say, I want to hear about Attila the Hun, Daniel. That sounds like some
Yeah.
cool stuff to talk
How about we
about.
come back to
Come
that in a
back to
future
that.
video?
All right.
And the
Is
fourth
that a whole
trumpet,
video?
you have the final overthrow of Rome by the Heruli, which were a branch of the Goths. Okay?
There's a word I never heard before. Harulai.
Heruli, or Heruli, I don't know how you say it. Um, the fifth trumpet,
You could fool
the
me with anything.
Muslims.
You could just pronounce it.
What's that?
You could say it any way you want. I'm not gonna know.
All right. The fifth trumpet is the Muslims.
Is that the
And then
Ottomans?
the
Ottoman Empire? Or no?
so the I think that was the Turks,
Turks. Okay.
which is the sixth trumpet, they subjugated the eastern third of the empire. Okay, so let's see. They conquered Constantinople with the giant cannons that they had commissioned built for them to take it down. So, in fact, the largest cannon, it shot a 1,260-pound ball with a 3-foot bore. Huge cannon. So it was interesting because they had 60 oxen were needed to actually pull this thing, to draw it. And so the cannons were behind the army in the tail of the army and pulled by oxen. So then they had to swing those cannons around in order to shoot. So essentially they had in their tail fire and brimstone that they would turn and shoot, and that's how they destroyed Constantinople.
It's not attack helicopters?
Probably not attack helicopters.
Dang it.
So what remained of the Roman Empire at that point was only the Western papacy.
You need to make like a multiple choice answer, like what is the prophetic fulfillment of this? And like attack helicopters, Turkish cannons.
Right.
Futurists would get them all wrong.
After this, you have the Renaissance, which began after the fall of Constantinople. You have the printing press in 1440, where the Bible was now published in common language that people could read. Hence, it was all in Latin or languages that couldn't be read or accessible to the average person. Then you have Wycliffe and eventually Luther, who challenged the papacy. You have Greek scholars fleeing to Europe and accelerating the printing in Holland and Germany. Greek is being taught in European universities. Then you have printing being introduced in England in 1476.
Always makes me feel guilty for not reading my Bible. Like, it's literally people that had no access to it. I know,
right?
And it's like dying just to get it printed.
Right. And so then you've got Erasmus printed his Greek New Testament in 1516. 1522, Luther's New Testament in German. 1526, Tyndale's English New Testament and Swedish Bible. 1537, the Bible in Danish and Matthew's English Bible. 1539, the Great Bible in every English church by command. And then 1611, the King James authorized version.
1611, yeah.
Now we're getting to something we know about, right?
I've heard of that one before.
So we have this time leading up to the Bible becoming accessible in people's ordinary language, where they're not dependent upon the hierarchy of the papacy to enforce their religious dogma.
I was raised King James. If it wasn't, King James, and
yes,
it just didn't sound right. Still bothers me. King James is still my favorite. I think the original,
so you have this
original 1611 had the Maccabees in it. Just a little shout out to the intertestamental period.
Yes, shout out, always up for a shout out to the intertestamental period, yes. The oft neglected period. Should be read more. But this would be sweet as honey to have this scripture available in your own language, but it inevitably would lead then to uprisings in which the empire would then have to crush. So the sweetness, the sweet scroll, sweet as honey, would then lead to bitterness in your gut, because the preaching of the Word of God led to the papal sword of bitterness, martyring millions, of believers who protested and who sought religious freedom. So there's a possible historicist
the bitter waters we're getting there.
What's that?
Is that where we're going with this? The bitter waters, the wormwood, and all that.
Well, there's scripture of the scroll that was eaten. It's as sweet as honey.
I just thought you were being very poetic tonight.
No, I think it's Revelation 10:10. I went to the angel and said, "Give me the small scroll. Take it and eat it." He said, "It will make your stomach bitter, but your mouth it will be as sweet as honey." So there's possible historicist interpretation of Revelation 10:10.
Well, didn't like Jews used to give their kids honey when they would read them the Torah when they were little? Oh,
Makes sense.
something I've heard.
I don't know.
I don't know if there's any connection.
Probably. I mean, I think it would be yeah, because honey was always like this celebratory thing, like eating it, wasn't it eaten like at
It's the land of milk and honey.
the breaking the fast at Yom Kippur and stuff?
I forget. I don't know if they would do honey at the breaking the fast. I have to look that one up. But that was one question I had when you were going through all this. I'm like, what are the Jews doing? Were the Jews involved in, translating at least, the Tanakh, the Old Testament? Or were they working with the Christians to get these publications done? And
that's a question I don't know the answer to.
because you talked
I'll
about
have to study up on that.
how they were spread out after like the Bar Kokhba rebellion, 133 or whatever. Like, where did they go? What did they do?
Well,
they're scattered amongst the nations. What are they doing?
right. I mean, you at least have all these Greek texts translated by Jewish scholars, like the Septuagint and stuff, that had to have been kept. And so I know that when a lot of them fled Constantinople, they took these manuscripts with them as they fled, which then would have been used to have also been translated. But that's a good question that I don't have the answer. But I can tell you this. Psalm 19:10 says that God's words, his judgments, talking about Torah, are more precious than gold, and they are sweeter than honey from the comb. So I think that there's... Psalm 119:103 says, your words to my taste, sweeter than honey to my mouth. So I think it's not a stretch to say that eating a scroll that tastes sweet refers to the words of God. But eating it then causes bitterness because of the result of the knowledge that you gain, the wisdom you gain from it requires action, and that action would then require sacrifice or martyrdom, potentially.
Ain't that the truth, man? I was thinking about that today. It's like, that's why I said eat it. It's not just read it, because you could read something and not consume it. But if you really consume it, it should change you. And
I like that.
Everyone thinks that change is going to be pleasant. It's like, God's telling you to take up your cross. It's like, you're going to lose everything, essentially.
Man.
But maybe that's a good...
Isn't that the truth?
Because this is the first time I'm hearing this. I've never heard you talk about this before. I know I should have been more diligent reading your book. That's why we're doing these talks.
I mean, again, this section on Revelation is what I'm currently trying to work on, and it's still a work in progress.
Is it causing bitterness?
But I've spent the last several months in Daniel and Matthew and Zechariah and Micah and all these other prophets trying to understand. Yeah, Zechariah, before I spend too much time trying to understand Revelation. Because if I don't understand what came before, I won't understand Revelation appropriately. So...
I feel that too, because I always want to everyone wants to study Revelation. I just haven't felt right about it for probably a good 5 years. Because I feel like I just need to understand more. Like I did a deep dive on Zechariah, so I said I liked it. And it's like I feel like, okay, that's a good stepping stone. It's helping me prepare more for Revelation. I still don't know if I'm ready, but this is helping me get there.
Well, good. I'm glad that's helpful. One of the things we talked about last time briefly, trying to figure out, did Jesus already come back, and can we trust history, and can we trust dating? Well, we have something. Did I touch on?
You said Jesus was living in the North Pole, I believe.
Right. We talked about the material preterism that does teach that Jesus is living at the North Pole, and that all of history is basically a fabrication, and that our dating schemes are fabrications. So, one big problem with that is that we have something called absolute chronology. And that's where we can take events that happen astronomically. So like if someone says, hey, in this year there was a a total lunar eclipse.
Like
And 7 years
Josephus.
later, there was another one, exactly, that happened here. We can go back and say, all right, when did a total lunar eclipse occur over this place, and then this one occurred over this place 7 years later? Well, we can actually pinpoint the date of that. Right? We can figure out where were the position of the stars, the moon, sun, all those things in time through our algorithms in astronomical software.
That's crazy.
Now, how do we know that it is crazy, like, but it's a technology that we only have access to now.
Right.
And how can you trust it? Well, you can trust it
can
because
download Stellarium, by the way, and just do what
Yeah.
he's talking about. It's crazy. Just put
It's
a date
free.
in, and it'll show you what the sky looked like.
you know what? Because you said that,
It is hard to know. Like, sometimes we don't know exactly when Jesus was born because there's arguments, because we don't even know when Herod died.
right? We don't know when Herod died. Okay, so here's what I'm gonna do. I've just pulled up Stellarium here, and it's going crazy, showing me Starlink, which is annoying. There we go. So let's go to location, and we're going to type in Jerusalem. Okay. And we're going to go to, let's look up daytime window. So we're going to go to all right, so we're going to go to September 11th, 3 BC. Now this says -2 because in Julian astronomical dating there is a year 0. So -2 is the equivalent of 3 BC. So now I'm going to zoom out a little bit. I'm going to remove the atmosphere. I'm going to show the constellation art, labels, and lines. And I'm going to pull up, we're going to remove the ground so you can see all of the heavens as if you didn't have the ground impeding your view. And let's see, I want to take off the meteor showers, take off the artificial satellites, and then
that's pretty cool.
I'm going to pull up an ecliptic grid. So this grid shows the path of the sun, known as the ecliptic. So the sun travels in this path. You can see the sun right here. I'm going to click on it, and we're going to zoom in on the sun. So now you can see the line that the sun will traverse over time. Well, what do we see right here? I'm going to change my mount here so you see a side picture of it. And what you see is the sun clothing a woman. You see the moon at her feet, and you see Leo at her head. Now, Leo is always at Virgo's head. Okay, and how many stars are in Leo? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now, do we know how many stars were in Leo? Like, how many stars were counted in the constellation Leo 3,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago? We can't know for sure, but what we estimate and what we know today is that they count 9. But planets, or planetais, is just the Greek word for a wandering star.
So they would have counted it as a star.
Yeah. So it's a star that moves, because see, all these other ones are fixed. They don't move. Now, technically they do move. They do move from our perspective. But
just a
these
simple
move.
explanation, right? Because the planets they could see moving and wandering,
Yeah.
having different patterns.
It's an asterism that moves. Okay? So now what do we have? You have
Is that Jupiter there? Okay.
2 stars here, and you have Jupiter here. So what do we have? 9, 10, 11, 12 at her head. A crown of 12 stars.
Revelation 12.
So here, all these things are happening. And interestingly enough, at this time, you've got Jupiter goes into a movement called retrograde. And that, from our perspective, because Jupiter moves at a certain speed relative to the Earth's spin, which means that at some times it will appear that Jupiter will move backwards from our frame of reference, called retrograde motion. So if I press play, I'm just going to take this and move the day. I'm clicking the day, and you're going to see, I'm going to hold it down. You're going to see Jupiter does this. Oh, what's it doing? It's going backwards. Retrograde motion is one of the reasons that we know that the Earth is spinning, and it's not the planets spinning around us. That too. Oh. So there, it crowned Regulus. Jupiter encircled Regulus and crowned it. And that began on the very same day that you saw the Revelation 12 sign. And now look, Jupiter's done. It's moving on. Moving on. So, retrograde motion is not a rare event, but encircling Regulus, the chief star of Leo the Lion, Regulus is basically means prince or little king. Okay? Jupiter.
Is that where we get regal from?
Yeah, regal. So, who is the Lion of the tribe of Judah that holds the scepter? Right? And when Balaam prophesied a star out of Jacob who will rule with a scepter. Okay, so you have this imagery, this language in the heavens that God even gave us. So what was the star the Magi saw? Well, a lot of people believe this is the star that the Magi saw, and this pertains to the Revelation 12 sign. Okay, so
Jupiter is the star.
So yeah, Jupiter would have been the star. Now, Jupiter is known as the king's planet, right? A lot of people even make the claim that the name, you ever heard people say the name Yahweh is a pagan name, that it stands for Jupiter and all that sort of nonsense?
I've heard that, but yeah, variations of such things.
Yeah. Well, the fact is that
it's Yahuwah.
Yeah, right. So, and I don't care like if you pronounce it differently than what I think, because I could be wrong. But the point is that the association of Jupiter being a king planet is not, it doesn't have an origination in pagan idolatry. It has been amalgamated and perverted to the worship of these stars through pagans. Okay, so to the ancient astrologers, biblical magi, they would have understood that the king's planet just crowned the king's star in Lion, Leo. Okay, so now you've got this happening on that date, which matches up with potential time for Yeshua's birth. Okay, so just for reference here, I want to just show you what the Mazzaroth is, because the Mazzaroth is mentioned in Scripture. Yeah, so it's these 12 constellations.
We're running into the hour here.
That follow the line.
Wrap it up in like 2 minutes. Go ahead.
Wrap it up? Okay. I'll wrap it up. Okay. So
I'm saying
you got Leo,
I'm saying you got
Virgo,
like 2-3 minutes.
Libra, Scorpio. Yep, you got it. Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, and back to Leo. So these ancient cultures were always watching, and you know why they worshipped Molech? Molech was the bull god. That's why they made the golden calf. They were worshiping. They made this image in the heavens their idol. Why? Because they followed the position of the sun during the vernal equinox, and around that time period, around 4,000, 3,000, up to around 2000 BC, the sun had its vernal equinox position in this constellation, and it would precess and move and move and move until the next age, which was Aries. That's why when Josephus talks about Passover happening in Aries, because during his time period, that's when it would occur. And so due to the precession of the equinoxes, this would move, and that's why it then went into Pisces, and that's why people are talking about the age of Aquarius. You heard people talk about that. It's even in songs. So the point is, this was very relevant to the biblical context and culture, right? And that's why people used to worship the bull. And I'm going to wrap it up. But that's the point. Like, it's all real. It's all there. It's all context. The issue isn't whether it exists or not. The issue is whether we're paying attention and how we fit that into our orthobox, so to say. So I'm going to close out of this, and I'll stop sharing.
That was really cool.
Any closing remarks?
No, that was good to see. Stellarium and that, just the point alone of how we can kind of prove history. Like, people are saying, oh, history's made up. Well, we could look at events and look at, cosmological signs and prove that, and that's pretty cool. Yeah. Especially seeing Jesus' birth. So you believe it was 3 BC based on that?
I do. Yeah.
I think it's strong. I think it's strong
based
evidence.
On other things too. Yeah.
So would that make Herod's death
in 2 BC?
2 BC. Okay.
Yeah. Now
I've heard
there
5.
Are people that,
I think I've heard 5 BC before, but
yes. So the conventional chronology is 4 BC, and so there's a huge debate. And there's 2 primary schools of thought, and that's one thing I do cover pretty thoroughly in the book. That's one of the sections I just finished. So kind of going through that helped me to be like, okay, it's okay for me to land in 3 BC because I've established that it is possible that Herod died later than what the conventional chronology has accepted for the longest time. So
we like Josephus, but he's not always right.
Yeah, and our interpretation of Josephus is also clouded by other things. So good stuff.
Attila the Hun next time, for sure.
I'll try. I'll try out on Attila the Hun.
If you come back to join us on the Pharisee Heresy.
Yes. Thanks for having me, Dr. Klein.
This has been very fun. Thank you. I learned a lot.
It's not a flex, just need a little cultural context. It's not complex. Oh, can't you see? It's not a heresy. Be a Pharisee. Oh, no, 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 no. I'm just like he. Yeah, yeah. Pharisee. Heresy. To be set apart. It's not an art. I just put the horse before the cart. You wanna be a servant, but you're not observant like the Pharisee. Oh, no, 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 I'm just like he. Hey, yeah, heresy, Pharisee. I'm a Pharisee follower. DC Talk told me love's a verb, and that's why I observe the Torah, just like Yeshua. Shema, Zedekiah, Emunah, and Teshuvah. Shema, Zedekiah, Emunah, and Teshuvah. Just like Yeshua. The greatest of the Pharisees. Oh yeah. I just wanna be like he.